Hey everybody, it's Ed. Before we get started, I want to thank two brand new Patreon supporters, Shauna Sherrick and Joshua Stoles. Both Shauna and Joshua went to mountainandprairie.com/support and signed up to support the podcast through Patreon, which is either monthly or annual support. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, Patreon is the financial foundation of all things Mountain and Prairie. So thank you very, very much to everybody who has supported via Patreon or in other ways over the years. I really do appreciate it. This is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast. I'm Ed Robertson. My guest today is Nick Offerman. Nick is an actor, author, humorist, and woodworker who's best known for playing the legendary character Ron Swanson on NBC's Parks and Recreation. But his success as an actor is just the tip of the iceberg. He's written 5 New York Times best-selling books, is the narrator of 3 of Wendell Berry's audiobooks, and owns and operates Offerman Woodshop, where he and a small collective of woodworkers handcraft everything from spoons to furniture to canoes. And as many of you know, Nick is a staunch advocate for conservation, responsible land stewardship, and sustainable agriculture. Nick's most recent book is titled Where the Deer and the Antelope Play, the pastoral observations of one ignorant American who loves to walk outside. And it's an excellent, thought-provoking read. It follows Nick on a series of adventures through the American West and the English countryside. Adventures driven by his desire to better understand conservation, recreation, and humans' connection to the land and wild places. Along the way, he explores everything from the legacies of John Muir and Aldo Leopold to regenerative agriculture, without shying away from tough, complex topics such as industrial farming and the conservation movement's impact on indigenous cultures. The book also hits on many of the underlying ideas that are often explored here on Mountain and Prairie, including nuance, empathy, compassion, curiosity, and doing work that makes the world a better place. I love the book, and I highly recommend it. I met up with Nick in Los Angeles at Offerman Woodshop, and we had a fun, inspiring, and at times hilarious conversation about everything from Aldo Leopold's land ethic to his work as a, quote, traveling clown. And those are his words, not mine. We started out by discussing the life-changing moment when a friend handed him a Wendell Berry book, and how Wendell's writings and philosophy continue to be one of Nick's most important sources of inspiration and instruction to this day. We discuss why hard work and being of service to others is so deeply embedded in Nick's DNA, and the critical role that artists can play in solving societal challenges. We talk about authenticity, the importance of being even-keeled, the need for nuance and open-mindedness, the skill of self-deprecation, enjoying the process of creating, not passing judgment, and much, much more. Where the Deer and the Antelope Play was just released in paperback, so follow the links in the episode notes to pick up a copy. And if you're a longtime listener, I know you'll love it. There are also links to Offerman Woodshop, Nick's touring schedule, and all of his other books, so click through and check it all out. 1,000 thanks to Nick for inviting me to his shop for such an amazing conversation, and thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy. All right, Mr. Offerman, here we are. Thank you very much. Seriously, it's just awesome to be sitting here with you. Awesome to see your wood shop in person, and we share a few mutual friends. And so it's, even though it's the first time we met, I feel like I know you. And then after hassling you and, stalkerishly reading your book.
I mean, I feel the same. It's funny when I hear that from someone like you, because to me, it's being accepted into the cognoscenti. You're the arbiter. You're the hub of all these great minds, all these great books. And here I am, a jackass with like a hiking book with a sense of humor. And I'm just glad that I made the cut.
Barely. You barely made it.
Well,
but we very well may have a contest here of who's the most self-deprecating. Because
okay.
I've been getting a bunch of aggressive shit recently from people saying, you need to stop being so self-deprecating. But you're an expert at it.
Well, I mean, I own a mirror is the problem. But let's proceed under the conception that we're terrific.
Okay. We'll do that just for the next hour. I can do that.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how I'm going to start this thing out. And as I was reading your book, I was really struck by so many similarities in the way you think about things and the way I think about things. And I think there's several foundational things that I think are similar. One, we both hit the lottery when it came to having loving, nice, supportive families. And then we both grew up in small towns where there was a real sense of community pre-internet. And then we both had our lives changed by reading specific books. And so I know some people that have gone down that path, but you're very, very similar to me in that way. And so I was wondering if you could start out with a story you've told before, but I think it really sets the foundation for this book. 1995, when you were handed a copy of a very, very special author.
I was doing a play at the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, which is about the best theater company in the country. And I was very lucky to be Ethan Hawke's understudy in a production of Sam Shepard's Buried Child, which is a great Pulitzer Prize-winning play. And this wonderful actor named Leo Burmester, who's no longer with us, sadly, but a wonderful, boisterous, bombastic Kentucky son, I don't know, took a shine to me and something about my work ethic. Around the theater, if you come from a farm, they'll always put you to work because you can sew a button or you can hammer a nail or what have you. And so Leo and I took a shine to each other, and he just brought me a couple books of Wendell Berry short stories. One collection was called Fidelity, and one was called Watch With Me. And he said, I think he, with a wink, I mean, like it was Gandalf in disguise, where he was like, I think you might like these stories. And I took them home and read them. And I mean, in a nutshell, describe Shakespeare in a nutshell, but in a nutshell, it was the reverence that Wendell Berry pays to the simple tactile work of human culture. I mean, he describes in one book a farmer and his hired hand building a fence, and he describes it as though it's the most beautiful Russian ballet you've ever seen. And I just immediately, he had me in tears thinking, he's talking about me and my dad and my family. My mom's whole side of the family are still farmers in Illinois. And all of these people lead these lives of service, and he's elevating them as high as any luminary you could come up with. And I think that's right. It was an epiphany for me, like the way he was elevating the every person. And so it changed, it changed my life. It opened my eyes to understanding the attention and affection that we need to pay to our farmers and to all of the laborers who, source the raw materials from Mother Nature and provide us with these cushy lives that we lead. And, that we're sort of taught by consumerist channels to forget about. Mm-hmm. We're told you just live in your pod, push your buttons, we'll bring you your smoothies, watch these shows, play these games, and don't worry about, it was like, okay, do we have enough power? No, don't worry about it. Just send us a check. We'll send you electricity. Don't worry about how we get it.
Yeah.
And that's something so that's at the core of what I am, humbly trying to communicate to my audience and my readership is we're all absolute dipshits. Like are we incredible? Absolutely. Did we produce Beyonce? We sure as hell did. But, did we create the Reuben? You're goddamn right we did. There are incredible things we've done, but at the same time, are we destroying aspects of our planet and our ecosystem? You bet your sweet bippy we are. And that idea that we've been tricked, and that is the farmer in me, in my blood, the idea that I'm sending my money to the gas company, to the utilities, with the sort of tacit understanding, you're going to send me power, and I assume you're going to be cool, right? And there's this understanding of like, well, yeah, just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then eventually, the bill comes to the table, and we're like, oh shit, they charged us for the bread, that fork you dropped, yeah, they charged us triple. Well,
one of the things that you point out in the book, and it just by the way you write and the way you think about things became clear to me, is it's not like you're coming at it preaching that, any rancher that doesn't do regenerative ag doesn't know what they're doing, or, farmers who are working on the industrial scale, they don't know what they're doing. You come at it with this educational perspective of like, look, there's been plenty of times where I didn't know something and then I learned something. Like I think about where I live in Colorado Springs. Nobody understands that the water's going to run out one day.
Right.
And so like when you started reading Wendell Berry, I mean, your parents had been teaching you this stuff all along, but did it just take that kind of different voice for you to understand it and to really appreciate what they were doing?
I suppose. And I just want to point out that in case there's any question that we're in Los Angeles, soon there will be a chopper landing and then the gunshots will begin. I mean, my dad is one of these guys who he now happens to be the mayor of our small town, Manuka, Illinois, and his dad had been the mayor before him. But they're very much farmer politicians. Now, they grew up farming, but my dad decided not to continue, and he became a school teacher. And my mom grew up on a farm a few miles down the road, and her family's still raising corn and soybeans, and they also had pigs through the time that I was in high school. So I grew up working on the family farm, but the son of a nurse, she's a labor and delivery nurse,
yep.
And dad was a school teacher. And so, like, my dad is still the most prolific gardener in town. He's the guy who'll leave a box of tomatoes on 18 doorsteps and cucumbers and you name it. Mom and dad both lead exemplary lives of service. My 3 siblings all live within a block of mom and dad, and they all are the same. They're great citizens trying to off-balance the damage that I'm doing to our society. And so they taught me these things, and I had these values in me, frugality and thrift and work ethic and decency and citizenship, but I didn't care about it. I didn't like, I was like, yeah, what are you, Little House on the Prairie? You know, I want to be cool. I want to go to the city and be in a David Lee Roth video in a Corvette with girls in bikinis. And eventually I got there and was like, I called my dad. I got to college one day and called my dad. I don't know, once the weight of adulthood landed on my shoulders and I realized I had to keep my own checkbook, and now I'm responsible for myself. And I called my dad and said, okay, Dad, are you sitting down? You were right. I'm sorry. And I will now, I'm now going to spend the rest of my life aspiring to do what you've been telling me all along. And so, I mean, cut to, I'm like living a hedonistic life I'm in my mid-20s. I'm just a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing my best to participate in this culture of storytelling through the theater, through performing narratives. And I don't know, I mean, organically it brought these Wendell Berry stories to me. And I guess it was a combination of the world I was pursuing, the world of literature and performance, conflating with my hometown. Shortly after I did that Sam Shepard play, I did an adaptation of William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying by this great artist named Frank Galati. And same thing, where it was, it's very much about a Dust Bowl family, and it's the same way that Chekhov wrote his stories and made them the most beautiful drama and the highest highs and the lowest lows with the narratives of everyday life, understanding that everybody's high stakes are the same.
Sure.
Whatever reason you're trying to race through traffic and makes you want to cut somebody off here in LA, it's all the same, whether you've got a pregnant lady in the car or you're just trying to get to a Black Friday sale or you name it, or maybe you just have to tinkle real bad. And so it's sort of understanding that great leveling. I don't know. It just struck me, and I'm so grateful that ever since then, it's given me purpose to the things that I create, rather than just trying to get good jobs or get an extra BMW in my garage or what have you. I feel very lucky that by my late 20s, I had it pointed out to me that wealth and fame are not satisfying goals.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to taste a little bit of those and was like, oh, this is stupid. This doesn't feel nearly as good as working hard all day with my friends and family. And so I think I'll keep trying to do that.
Yeah, that comes through crystal clear in everything you write, but just this almost like a responsibility you feel to work hard. And I heard this I think it was when you were on Conan O'Brien, and it stuck with me I think it was one of your earlier appearances there. And then you mentioned it in one of your books where you met your beautiful wife, moved into a nice house, and you just like, all right, I got it made. This is what I've been looking. Can you tell that story? Because I think that's so telling of your mindset.
I mean, that's a good pull, because that's what I just thought of when I said it made it all the way to the David Lee Roth video with the girls in the Corvette. I made it to Hollywood. I backed into a marriage with a legendary and gorgeous performer, Megan Mullally, and we met doing a play and got together, and a few years in bought our first house in the hills. And one day she went off to shoot Will and Grace, and we had a little swimming pool. And I mean, all of these things, I just giggled as I put Neil Young on the outdoor speakers, which I didn't know were a thing, around the pool. And it's his record from, I think, around 72 called Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere. And I smoked a joint, and I floated on a thing in the pool, and just thought, you made it, buddy. You did it. Like, you are so terrific that here you are. And I got through like a song, and the second song started, and I thought, what are you going to do? Just lay here like an asshole in this pool all day? Like you could be getting something done. And I can never thank my mom and dad enough for the knowledge that at the end of the day, if I've gotten some good work done, and Wendell preaches the same thing, Wendell Berry in his books, if you look around and you see the work that needs doing and you get to doing it, that will solve a lot of your problems. Mm-hmm. If you sort of buy into this modern American dream where you're supposed to get rich enough that you can put your feet up and just indulge yourself, that's when then you're like, what's the matter with me? And you become too solipsistic. You become addicted to things, and it's because you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, he writes so beautifully about how we've been sold a bill of goods that hard work is something to be avoided. Getting your hands dirty is somehow beneath us, when that's where all the good shit happens. You know, if I have this wood shop, if I become just a gentleman woodworker and I show up in a suit in a fancy car and let my laborers, get dirty, I would be tricking myself, and it would be a horrible trick, because they would be having all the fun. They'd be getting to use the chisels. And what would I be doing? Like using my abacus to count all the shekels in my coffer?
Throwing money in there.
Yeah.
There's jumping ahead that reminded me of a part in the book where the deer and the antelope play, which I want to talk about in detail. But there's a part, I think it's in the third section, where you're talking about this ridiculous website that I think I've heard podcast ads for, called Blinkist, where you can get
Jesus Christ.
books. You can read, quote, read books in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And so that goes right along with, I don't understand who would want to do that.
I don't fucking get it.
Why would anybody do that? It's like talking about running these long races. If I could run 100 miles in an hour. Right. There's no point in running 100 miles.
Exactly.
I want to get my ass kicked.
Well, you've zeroed in on the ethos of my wood shop. Everybody in my life on the business side, my finance people, for decades now say this wood shop is great. People love it. And this will date the conversation, but they'll say, there used to be a magazine in the back of every plane seat called Sky Mall Catalog. And it was all these products. It was kind of like a Sharper Image kind of thing, where it was just, gadgets and cute gewgaws and what have you. And it's a little magazine stand, and we make it in mahogany, maple, walnut, and oak. And my business manager initially was like, man, we could get you something. You're Mr. Megan Mullally. Like we could get a set of coasters in the Sky Mall catalog, and then you're set. And I said, Pete, the whole point of the wood shop is that I and my cohorts, my elves, get to make things with our hands. And that's how we make our money. And that makes a very satisfying life. The more we go into production and it becomes like a factory, then we are not making things with our hands. We're pushing buttons on machines, on our chair making machine. And then we sit there and get fat while a robot has all the fun. So the whole ethos is to craft it in a way. I'm constantly tweaking the experience for my employees to try and give them the best possible living with the best possible benefits while they're still being satisfied, rather than just thinking about the bottom line. Because
the nerve of you doing that.
Well, that's what I'm preaching, and I know I'm crazy. But you said something earlier about that idea that, like, I count myself among us Americans and us earthlings. And so when I look at industrial farmers, for example, I don't look at them as them. I look at them as us. We all did that, like over our lifetimes and before our folks' lifetimes. Our society said, hey, we made way too much corn. What should we do with it? Like, all of these things came about as one-time good ideas to somebody, to some extent. Hey, if we do things this way, we can feed all these people. If we do, and it's like, wow, this is working. Oh shit, diabetes. Mm-hmm. Or hell, this is, oh no, we've ruined the topsoil. We've created microorganism deserts, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, we're all doing this together. If when I write about politics, I say, look, here's an example of a guy who I think we can all agree is a real asswipe. Some of us like that and say, we want the asswipe. And some of us don't like it for obvious reasons, but it's us. Like, we made this government. We vote, we campaign. And so, I'm always game to shake hands and have everybody sit down and have a beer rather than like pull out a weapon or even talk about anything like that. My motto is hug before punch. It's never going to change that we all have to share what we have here, what the Creator has provided for us. So even though we're going to piss each other off, let's continue to try and get along. And, it's a project that will never end because it will always involve human beings. We're never going to be like, well, we did it. Everybody's happy. All the systems are sustainable.
Go get in the pool, smoke a joint.
Anybody want some clear drinking water? I'll just grab it out of the stream.
I want to talk about the book Where the Deer and the Antelope Play, because we were talking before we started recording. I said it really could be like the Mountain and Prairie instruction manual for people to read, because you talk about conservation from both the Muir side of things and the Leopold side of things. You talk about being humble, having a sense of humility, being curious, just all these things that are important to me. And I didn't even realize it when I started this podcast, but that's kind of what I'm trying to get at with people. And so for your book, could you talk about how the idea, when you had that conversation with Wendell Berry and he told you were talking about conservation, and he said, instead of looking through it through this lens, maybe look through it through that lens, and how that started?
Sure. I mean, I knew immediately what he meant. And I mean, and a lot of what I've already said, like sort of my soapbox issues, dovetail really nicely with your whole trip about the strenuous life. I mean, it's that simple. It's like you're going to be much happier if you get out there and try. And what? That begs the question, at what? What do you mean? Well, look around you. Look at who needs what. Is it your family? Is it your neighborhood? Is it yourself? Who needs work to be done? Could be childcare. It could be cutting people's yards. It could be, it could be becoming an amazing tax preparer. Mm-hmm. There are people that love everything. Everybody, I always insist, has some great talent. And mine, inexplicably, after Leo Burmester gave me those Wendell Berry stories, I, as a fledgling theater man, I wrote a letter to Wendell Berry and said, hey, I'm this jerk in Chicago. Can I adapt one of your stories to the stage or the screen? I don't care which. You're just the best writer. I love your stories the most, and I want to tell them to my audience. That's what I do. And he wrote back this great letter. First of all, he wrote back and wrote this great letter that said, like, I like you and I like your letter. The answer is no. I'm not interested in seeing anybody else's version or adaptation of my work. Once I'm gone, that's fine. And I just shook my head and said, man, no, you son of a bitch, I respect you even more. And he does it with a sense of humor, So we started sporadically writing letters back and forth. Nothing, very, very much like disciple to guru. He was just very generous to always reply. He writes back to a lot of people. And eventually my obsession led me to be introduced to a great filmmaker named Laura Dunn. And I got to help her produce this movie about Wendell and his vision called Look and See, which is available on channels. And through that, I finally got in touch with his daughter, Mary, who kind of runs the outfit. She's a formidable, a wonderful leader, a great general of the army over there, who's gentle in all the right ways. She runs their outfit with an iron hand, but then also turns around and makes a mean chess pie, which I had not heard of before she served it. Eventually, when I got to meet Wendell and his amazing wife, Tanya, who, like any good household, it's not just him. She is perhaps the real power center on that acreage. And, got to talking to them, and it comes to pass that his son, Den, is a woodworker. And so my letters had never really sparked a lot. I think Wendell gets a lot of solicitation, but I thought mine were like, dear Mr. Berry, I am, decent to skilled in the following: hammer, shovel, scythe, chisel. This. I can hold any manner of livestock. I know what side to put the electric fence on, you name it. If I could, can I just come work with you for a week? I'd like to. And he always answered these things really generously. But then finally, somehow my name came up around this documentary, and his son said, "Oh, I just got the copy of Fine Woodworking magazine that he's on the cover of."
Oh, you're in.
Which is the only one that I have my own article where I invented a way to flatten a slab for like a table. And that is crazy serendipity, where the fact that I was a woodworker suddenly made me legit. And Wendell said, well, all right, let's have him over on Sunday afternoon and we'll talk to him on the porch. And so once the conversation began, it's an ongoing conversation. He and Tanya joke that he's just been writing the same book for 50 or 60 years and putting different covers on it because we haven't listened to him yet. The fact that I have to explain even who he is to most people drives me crazy. It's like having me say, I love John Lennon. And they're like, who? And I've not heard of. He writes what now? And so by the time Wendell made this sort of suggestion to me, what he was saying was, I was simply saying, I have this idea to try and communicate to my audience that may not come from rural areas, or even if they do, may not be in touch with their agriculture. It's farmers first, to my way of thinking. But then I extrapolate that to the men and women harvesting fish and seafood and so forth, and the people in the timber industry, and just all the people, culling the natural resources that create these cushy lives that we live. I said I wanted to write a book that's about how, just trying to do my part. Like, hey, you guys, we should be paying more attention to these systems, because the capitalists that are running these systems are rapacious, and we're not paying attention to the fact that they're using up all of our shit. Mm-hmm. It's our there's an incredible book called, there's two books. The writer's name is Elizabeth Royte, Royte, and they're about 15 or 20 years old now. But one is called Garbage Land and one is called Bottle Mania.
I think I've seen those.
She lives in an apartment in the book. I'm not sure. Her kids must be up and grown now, but it just occurred to her. She was helping clean up this filthy canal in the neighborhood of Gowanus, the Gowanus Canal, that's where I built my first canoe, coincidentally, in a pier in Red Hook. And when I got there, there was a newspaper at the little cafe. It was all very cute. It's where On the Waterfront was set.
Yeah.
The Hope and Anchor was the name of this cafe, and the place across the street, distilled their own bourbon and rum. And so it was a very evocative place to build my first canoe. And I went and ordered, breakfast at this cafe, and the local paper, the headline article was, some students had just tested the local canal, and if it was a human, it would die of gonorrhea. It was so gross. And so she coincidentally was out neighborhood cleanup of the canal, and it's just really gross and filthy and just full of all kinds of bad things. And she just thought, where is this coming from? Like there's garbage, there's needles, but there's also just like sewage. And is any of this coming from me? My apartment is 5 blocks away or whatever. And so as a journalist, she said, that's a great book idea. So she wrote this book tracing everything that left her apartment. 2 young parents and a kid, I believe. So sewage, garbage, and recycling. And, as you can imagine, it's really educational, but it's also terrifying and depressing. The fallacy of our recycling systems, the simple fact that the Pepsi bottling company invented the 3-arrow recycling symbol.
I did not know that.
So that I think it was in the late 70s, and it's been a while, so please don't fact check me, or do. But they invented that because they realized that since they started plastic bottles, they are no longer selling you Pepsi or soda pop. What they're selling you is plastic bottles. And it doesn't matter what's in the bottle. The profit comes from the bottles.
Yeah.
And but people didn't want to buy them because we use glass bottles because we're good citizens, like a lot of Europe. And we return them for a deposit. And they said, how can we get these suckers to buy these bottles? And they invented the recycling symbol. And they were like, it's cool.
I should have known that.
We recycle these. Now, it's been a while, but I don't believe that's apocryphal. And so this was a very inspiring book. And for her as well, it led her to then write her next book, Bottle Mania, about plastic bottles and the bottled water industry and how Nestle, for example, do you have Ozarka?
No.
In Colorado Springs?
I don't. Maybe so.
Around the country, whatever the biggest bottled water label is.
Yeah.
Here it's Arrowhead.
Okay.
In New England, it's Poland Springs.
Yeah, I've seen that.
There's Ozarka. I forget what it is, but it's every single one of them is Nestle. And so she goes on this deep dive in the town of Poland Springs, Maine, where Nestle owns the motherfucking aquifer. They own the groundwater. And it's a There Will Be Blood thing where it's like their milkshake, their straw, they have the longer straw. So there's been, and again, I'm not sure where things stand because this book is 15 years old, but it begs the question, what if they do that with our air? Like they're, a corporation is sucking the groundwater out and selling it back to us.
Yeah.
What's the matter with us?
Well, they're doing that in Colorado right now too.
All over.
Everywhere. It's crazy.
And so it's recognizing these things that like, it blows me away. I travel like crazy because I'm a touring clown. And so I do my best. It's hard. I mean, you can't be, if you like touring clowns or rock and roll bands, you have to understand that they're going to burn fuel. And there are many things that those also keep me humble, where I'm never going to get preachy because I burn as much gas as anybody.
Well, that goes the nuance you're talking about,
Absolutely. I mean, we're all human. And so it's better to have the conversation and recognize our foibles than like make it binary and become preachy. But one little thing that I do, I have these water bottles that we sell at Offerman Woodshop. It's a Nalgene, like 32-ounce water bottle. And this cool kid, actually, it was the teenager. It was the son of former podcast guest and proprietor of Fort Lonesome Chain Embroidery Systems and Artistry in Austin, Texas, Kathy Sever, who I'm besotted with her and her husband, Matt the electrician. Do you know his stuff?
I do. I support him on Patreon. I'm a big fan.
His song, The Bear, could be the theme song of your podcast. But I love playing this great theater in Austin, the Paramount. And I was really excited, and Matt and Kathy were coming, and they were bringing their teenagers, who are these really cool kids.
Sound cool.
Now they're young adults. And after the show, and I believe their son's name is Arlo, they came downstairs to the dressing room after the show, and I was all excited to sort of I love when I can get a teenager to give the slightest shit about anything that I do. Because, they're our hope. I believe they are our future. That's a figure of speech that you can attribute to me. I believe they are our future, the children. So I come downstairs, and Arlo's got this frown on his face, and we've just blown the roof off this place with 90 minutes of laughter and stupid songs. And I say, "Hey, what'd you think?" And he said, "Pfft." And I said, "What is the matter?" And he said, "Well, you have all of this messaging about like caring about natural resources and making things with your hands, but the entire time leading up to your show, before you came on, while we're listening to your pre-show playlist, on stage is just a single down spotlight with a stool and a huge bottle of Fiji water. You piece of shit." Like, he was so mad at me.
That's bold. I'm impressed.
And I shook my head and shook his hand and said, "Arlo, didn't even think of it. Thank you so much." Like, and from that day forward, I've used, and that was probably, 8 years ago, I'm responsible for maybe 10 plastic bottles since then.
Good for you.
He kicked me in the balls. I mean, and I said, that's ridiculous, because we have all become inured. And now it makes me so mad every time, the reason I mention touring is because I get on an airplane, and at every seat, they have a little like 6 or 8 ounce bottle of water.
So silly.
And I'm just like, what? We've all just accepted this. We've all accepted this dissemination of oil-based plastic bottles. And I'm like, look, we're all fucking up left and right, day in and day out. We got a lot of problems to solve. Greta will tell us, she has a list. But the one thing I can do is I'm going to carry this water bottle with me. And I'm so gratified that all over the world, in airports now, you can fill your water bottles. They have those cool things, and they have a little light that tells you if the filter is clean, which at LAX, it's always red. And everyone just fills it anyway, because you're like, well,
what am I going to do?
Yeah, I'll sacrifice my lungs for the planet.
Well, I mean, it's like the guy who started Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard. He takes your approach, where right up front he says, the planet is worse because of our business. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we're not going to try to make things a little bit better. Yeah. And then the thing about Arlo, pointing out that water bottle to you, that's an example we were talking about earlier. It's like, you just hadn't thought about it. It's not like you're some jerk who's like hell-bent on supporting Dasani.
And nobody is. That's the thing.
Yeah, nobody is. And that's why your book, that's one of the things I loved about your book, is that you present things that I bet a lot of people don't know anything about. Not because they're dumbasses or they're tearing up the environment, just because people are busy. We all got our heads in this Niagara Falls of information.
Sure. I mean, you're trying to raise a family, and the systems, the systems that we've all agreed to live in are telling you, go to this store, eggs are cheaper. Go to this gas station, go to this, my uncles who are the farmers, who are heroes to me. I mean, they're like a couple of Han Solos, and their families. Yeah. Like I'll never again mention farmers without mentioning farmers' wives and farmers' kids and farmers' dogs, for that matter. Like, because it's always a team. It's, but my uncles and their families, all they're doing is like doing their best to provide a good living for their families, raising corn and soybeans to meet the standards and the price that the market is demanding. That's it. And, they don't have time to read Michael Pollan books and say, wait, should we be planting row crops? Like, we've come through decades and generations of like really conservative and frugal living, and we're prospering because of it. And now you're telling me what?
Switch it up?
Yeah. I mean, all they know is what's on the chart down at the elevator in town where you haul your truckloads of beans.
Yeah.
And I mean, and these are huge heroes in my life. And so it's something that's going to be very incremental. And, the society's waking up. Climate change is helping. Just send up the red flags. And, there are people that it behooves them to say, oh, that's a hoax for political reasons or financial reasons. Meanwhile, towns that are being swept away by floods and fires are like, we beg to differ, and we can't help it. It's like, I always say, I mean, America will sit up and pay attention when the air conditioner shuts off for the last time. We're like, oh, what now? Oh, shit. They were right.
I wonder about that. So I wonder about even that sometimes, though, because after COVID, I think it became clear during COVID how quickly we can adjust to anything. It's like our best trait as a species and our worst. Like, you think about the obesity epidemic and how, 50% of Americans are not just fat, obese. Yeah. And everybody, there's a great pill you can take that'll help, or the healthcare businesses are making a ton, and humans just deal with it. And with COVID, we got real used to sitting at home by ourselves and wearing masks and doing all the stuff that you had to do during COVID, and it just became the norm.
Sure.
And so sometimes I wonder, like, what if a big portion of LA just gets wiped out by a fire? Will people wake up, or will they just be like, well, I guess we got to deal with it? I
mean, yeah, it's a great question. And it's what I love about that Pixar movie, WALL-E, about the robot. Yeah. It's a great encapsulation of this narrative where all the humans have just become fat and baby-like, floating around in chairs, and everything they eat is a smoothie, and suddenly they get into trouble and they're under attack, and they're like, holy shit, do we remember how to fly this thing? And the resilience of humanity, at least in that story, has a happy ending. But it would be nice if we could clean up our mess before it comes to that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, when you're talking about this is serious stuff, and in the book, the way you write about it, very serious, but it's not at all, you don't come off as just like furious, pissed off. Everybody who doesn't see this sucks, or what, you've still got a lighthearted approach to it. Is that just your nature to be able to kind of keep it between the lines and not just, because I get real mad about stuff. Mm-hmm. but that's not productive. And I feel like
it's not.
I mean, it's just complete waste of time. Whose mind are you going to change when you're yelling at them?
Yeah. I mean, I come by it honest. I can't, it's like, I didn't think about it and think, well, I'm going to be more even-keeled. When I was in high school on my football team, I was the head hunter. Like, I was the hardest hitter for a couple of years. Like, so there are parts of me, what I mean to say is that come from a very masculine place. And I'm often accused of masculinity, especially people that have enjoyed parks and recreation. And I'm a woodworker, and I'm strong and capable, and I love to cook meat and smoke it and so forth and all these things. But my disposition, I don't come from an old-fashioned world where that's particularly manly. I just think that's, I've written or said in my show, like, if you think pissing heroically, taking a punch, and being able to chop firewood makes you manly, I have two sisters that would beg to differ with you, who can beat the crap out of me, and who are perfectly, lovely. One's a librarian, one's a school teacher. But so all of those things, I don't know. Absolutely. Do they make me angry? Sure. I mean, I have human weaknesses, and many things make me fighting mad. But I generally am able to take a deep breath and instead of like leaning into stereotypical or pattern behavior, when masculinity is brought into it, for example, I'll say, why do we have to put a gender on things? Like, that's such an old-fashioned trope. Like going hunting, for example, and suffering some cold. That's not manly. That's just tough.
Yeah.
And I know, and then like cooking the most beautiful, delicious, dainty cupcakes. That's not feminine. That's just delicious and like dainty. But I have both of those in me. I will make the cupcakes and then I'll take them on the hunting trip or like, and everybody is an absolute rainbow of all these human aspects. And so when things make me mad, I absolutely have the same weaknesses as anybody, where I'm like, ugh. But maybe it's because I've been somewhat visible to an extent for a lot of my adult life. And so I know to like take a breath or count to 10 or step outside before sending that tweet or whatever. I mean, and so for better or worse, I'm able to take a breath and I learn this every day over and over again, either ignore it and don't engage in the world of like short attention span, tempest in a teapot. Or if I do engage, try and come back with a sense of humor to not only try and assert my side of things of like, I don't know, you guys, what if we're decent to all the people? What about that? But also try and do it in a way that's not incendiary, that's, that hopefully, and that's what I try to do with my books. I'll never be a great journalist or scholar. I am a voracious student. I love devouring the subjects that I love, and I love then trying to regurgitate those in a positive way so that hopefully others, and maybe even others that are way smarter than me, will be like, oh, right, this dumbass who was on TV wrote this book that I read, and it gave me an idea to actually do some really smart stuff. Whether it's in agriculture or it's, as Wendell Berry puts it, and Aldo Leopold and all of that cadre of great agrarian thinkers, it's all, you can't separate any of it. It's all connected. All of our social problems and all of our environmental problems and all of our financial problems are all attached to how we relate to our natural resources and the attention we pay to them or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of that and of being able to kind of regurgitate these great ideas in a way that makes it easy for somebody like me, maybe some of my favorite books are books like yours where it introduces me to a new idea and then it makes me want to go buy about 10 new books. Yeah. And I feel like your book is that in a million different ways. For people, I think most people who listen to my podcast are familiar with Aldo Leopold, but they may not. For the longest time, I didn't know anything about him. And, this is a guy working in conservation. So can you just give a brief sketch of how that name kind of came into your mind and what it means to you?
Wendell Berry speaks of learning so many things from Aldo Leopold, Leopold being among the great teachers of Berry's life. And he also writes like introductions for Aldo Leopold stuff. So Aldo Leopold grew up in Iowa and was just fascinated with the natural world, wanted to be what they used to call a naturalist. And at the turn of the 20th century, I believe, they started the first school of forestry at Yale, and he was recruited to be in the first or second class of that. Yeah. And from there, they immediately sent him to New Mexico, like, okay, you're ready. And he went out to work for the government in New Mexico, and I guess what became the Department of Forestry, and what became these departments that we know and love of like BLM and what have you. And so he, worked as an agent of the government, tending to nature in New Mexico, and just was thrown into the deep end and began learning with his colleagues. For example, they began exterminating apex predators. Yep. And he has a beautiful piece that is probably his most well-known piece of writing about shooting a wolf and coming to understand that mankind is being a terrible narcissist when he does things like that. It's Rachel Carson does a great job also when she describes people decide to like wipe out a certain bug in a lake in California. And they're like, great, we'll use DDT and we'll kill off this bug and it's going to make everything so much nicer. Well, they kill the bug, and then all the fish eat the poison bugs and they all die. And then all the birds eat the poison fish and they all die. So within one season, they just turn it into a wasteland of toxicity. On the same level, Leopold kind of realized this and just became an absolute wizard of agrarianism. He just wrote his most famous piece of writing is this book of essays called the Sand County Almanac, and all based on the precept, once again, that you can't pick out any one part of nature without affecting the rest of it. Nature needs every cog, even the parts that we don't know what they do. That doesn't mean they're worthless. Yep. They're all there because Mother Nature has spent eons figuring out how this machine works. And so far be it from mankind in our hubris to be like, well, I don't like that frog. It's loud. So let's get rid of him. And suddenly the ecosystem collapses,
Read this quote in the famous Nick Offerman voice. I got that from your book.
All right, I'll have to warm up if you want the famous Nick Offerman voice.
Get it ready.
Here we go. I don't often get asked, read this in your famous voice. If it's okay with you, I'll just use my normal voice.
Well, okay.
This is from Aldo Leopold. All ethics so far evolved rest upon a single premise, that the individual is a member of a community of interdependent parts. His instincts prompt him to compete for his place in that community, but his ethics prompt him also to cooperate, perhaps in order that there may be a place to compete for. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants and animals, or collectively, the land. Pretty badass.
Very badass. And you've narrated a bunch of Wendell Berry's audiobooks, including his newest,
correct?
Three.
Yeah, I would. 3, not a bunch. I wish it were a bunch. I hope before I'm done to do his whole catalog, although he's very persnickety about having a Kentuckian, and maybe he should be. Mm-hmm. I dabble in doing I can do a passable Wendell. I'd have to do some studying to do an accurate job of all the voices in his fiction.
Oh, sure.
But I'm very proud. I mean, in the documentary Look and See,
yes,
he says something very profound about the filmmaker asks him in an interview. We live in a time of divorce. I feel like we live in modern America where things are coming apart more than coming together. And Wendell said, well, yes, but that's why it's important to have artists, people who see two things, not all things, but see two things that they think ought to be put together, and they put them together. Whether they're writing a symphony or making a film or writing a novel or building a stool. Mm-hmm. We are the people who create, and we see that's the work, to put things together. And so she asked me if I would build a stool, a little 3-legged stool, to show on the screen while he's saying this gorgeous quote. And I burst into tears and was like, and so in the movie, it's just my hands and tools making this walnut stool. And I don't think I'll ever have a piece of film that I'm more proud of. And also commensurately, I get to read 2 books of his essays, his big hit, his white album, The Unsettling of America.
Yes.
And then A World-Ending Fire, which is another incredible book of essays. And then his most recent, The Need to Be Whole. And I mean, getting to just participate, it's kind of crazy, because when I first wrote him almost 30 years ago, when he refused to allow me to adapt his stuff, he said, well, just write your own stories. I said, well, I could, but I'm not you. I'm proven to be competent at disseminating great writing to people. Writing great writing is your thing. Can't we get together? And so even then I was saying, please just let me participate. Let me be part of the delivery system. in getting your words to more people. And so the fact that then 25 years later, I get to do the audiobooks of his incredible essays is profoundly moving. And I'm really grateful. And it's the greatest responsibility I've ever felt, I think, in working in the arts, is like trying to get this right.
Sure.
Because like I said, this is going to hopefully reach the exact 20 or 30 young women or men that are going to solve a lot of problems.
How do you think about authenticity? Because I feel like you, in everything you do, whether it's your writing or your acting, or your woodworking, it's very clear when Nick Offerman's doing something, it's Nick Offerman. But in the case of Wendell Berry, that you're just the vehicle, and so it's Wendell Berry's words that are coming through you. And so, like, when you were, say, in high school or in your early days in Chicago, do you feel like you were being the authentic version of yourself, or has that developed over time with confidence, with success, that kind of thing?
I think the parts of me as a teenager and in my 20s that would make people laugh, and the parts that worked hard at labor, I think those were the building blocks of being, whatever my authentic self is, which feels gross, but like, as I was developing my brand, first goes at the lard. But I can tell you a couple things. One was I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I knew I enjoyed entertaining people. I knew I enjoyed playing music as I was like picking where to go to college. And in my senior year English class, Mr. Luther, for our final exam, we had to write an essay, and he took a poem and taped it up on the wall in front of the class with a piece of masking tape. And I couldn't tell you what the poem was, but he said, "This is your subject. Write a thing." And I just had the idea, and I was a good student. I was, one of the top in my little high school, but I was also a smartass, and I was always balancing the two, seeing like how much I could get away with while still succeeding. And so it just occurred to me, I just had this idea, and I made up this essay about the history of masking tape. And it was funny, and I talked about some, local tribe and applying pine pitch to birch bark and, early tape, basically, and how they had developed packaging and so forth. It was very much thinking outside the box, and it could have gone one of two ways, and he celebrated it. He held it up in front of the class and said, "This is all I'm ever trying to get any of you to do, is think for yourself and have an idea." And he had me like read it to the school at an assembly or whatever. And so that was a huge feather in my cap, where I was like, okay, when correctly applied, your smartassery, you like the teacher in junior high that said, "What, are you going to get a job someday as a smartass?" By God, I am, Mrs. Flatness. I'll show you and all your square cohorts. And so that was a big moment. And then actually, I went through 5 years of theater school and into Chicago for a couple of years before I figured out how to bring whatever my authentic self is, how to bring it to my acting. Uh-huh. And so I didn't do well. I couldn't get cast because I was trying too hard to be something that I thought that was better than me.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm just some dipshit from Manuka. Who cares about me? I need to be way cooler. And so I was trying way too hard to be some cool version of, something that eventually the same part of me that learned life in a David Lee Roth video is not one to be sought after. And so at some point, right in my mid-20s, it finally just dawned on me what Ringo is talking about in the song, "Just Act Naturally." And I was like, oh, if I just act like myself, people are really responding in a way. And that was the beginning, where my best friend, Joe, who was the director of our theater company, he finally gave me my first lead role. And he was like, "That's it. Just act like yourself." And that was the beginning of, a lifetime of craft that is still a learning process. That's one of the wonderful things about life as a human being is if you understand that we're never done learning. For me as an actor or a woodworker or a writer or a husband or a maker of sweet love, there will always be higher pinnacles. There will always be, more trails to explore. And that's what makes life worth living. That's what makes me get up in the morning is having improvement to find. And so also with my books, if you ever write a book, I say to your audience, you'll learn a couple things. One is you're never done writing it. Like you're never like there. All 322 pages are perfect. Like you could keep editing your book or your movie or your song. Yeah, you name it. And so at some point you and your editor are like, okay, that's it. And so you have to understand that. So there's immediately humility baked into that where it's like, look, I did my best. Here it is. I hope you enjoy it. I could have tried fixing it for another year, but I wanted to get it to you because it's kind of timely. And the same is true of so much of what we do. And so that, I think, is the answer to your question, is that like at some point I became okay with for better or worse with the package that I've been given, where I'm like, okay, look, I'm never going to be the cutest or the fleetest of foot or this or this or this, but I am the most Nick Offerman. Mm-hmm. And so if I just, deal with things earnestly, it's funny. I mean, ever since I got to LA, I would be in conversations with people and I would just be talking to them.
Yeah.
And whatever my timbre or my cadence, people would laugh as though I was Garrison Keillor or something, and they would say, "Are you a stand-up?" And at the time, I would be offended because I didn't even know enough about comedy. I would think of like Rodney Dangerfield, where I'm like, "No, I'm a super cool modern actor from Chicago. Like, I've worked at Steppenwolf, you asshole." Little did I know that meanwhile, the coolest stand-ups are all like working, down the street in LA. And eventually I learned that and learned to look up to them. And now people say, "Are you a stand-up?" And I say, "No, I'll never be as great as our stand-ups, but I am a humorist." And I figured out how to make an audience laugh without writing too many jokes. I've written 2 jokes in my career. And would you like to hear them?
Yes, I would.
I've been touring for like 12 or 13 years. And I really look up to like Zach Galifianakis as a buddy, Sarah Silverman, like these great stand-ups who are geniuses at writing jokes. Not me. But I wrote a joke in a show called Full Bush, and the joke went like this. So, there's these dating apps on our phones. You've heard about these things. There's Grindr for gay men. There's Tinder, which is for most people. There's that new one for farmers called Attractor, which did very well. That joke played very well. And then I recently wrote one when people talk about this episode I did this episode of a show called The Last of Us on HBO that was explosively received. It was a great show. It was kind of like Game of Thrones level, like fandom. And the creator and writer, Craig Mazin, who also did the show Chernobyl, who just is obviously a genius of entertainment. So he wrote this script. And he's amazing. And I was lucky enough to get to play one of the roles. And it's a guy who's like a prepper, survivalist, and then he ends up having a love story. But the whole beginning of it is establishing him like building his survivalist world, which involves a lot of labor and like building fence and like building booby traps and, harvesting and processing a deer and gardening and, you name it, like building and like all of the aspects of survival. And so the show was so well received that I had to sort of develop a pattern to say, thank you. I'm so grateful I got to be in it. It's the best script I've ever been handed. And then eventually I wanted to say something funny, and it took me a while to workshop this. And the joke I came up with was, I just feel very lucky they needed a guy who could use a shovel because there's only 3 of us in Hollywood. And Harrison Ford passed, and Jane Lynch was already booked.
Yeah, that's good.
And it took me like 3 months to write that joke. So, but luckily, I can for some reason the particular way in which I speak slowly makes people laugh. And so I also write and perform stupid songs.
Come to Colorado. I know you have in the past. You need to get it on the schedule.
I will. I've really enjoyed playing also the Paramount in Denver. I've had a really good time there, and I've done some book events in Fort Collins as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel so lucky that I get to do these things, because all I'm trying to really do is engender a conversation, and the fact that I get paid handsomely to sell books or to travel and, sing you a song about using a handkerchief, or my new song is about eating ass. It's going over big time.
How long did that take?
People are finding it very palatable.
Was that faster than the joke writing process?
It was, yeah. I mean, AB rhymes. When I found out that people will like properly metabolize my stupid jokes through AB rhymes, I was like, well, guess what? I'm a humorist.
Here we go.
Because my musicianship is perfectly medium, but the delivery system works where they laugh at my dumb things. I wrote a song called the Rainbow Song for my wife, and it starts with you read me my rights when you arrested me. You put me on trial and gave me life. But orange, you glad I didn't say banana when you made me your bitch and I made you my wife.
Beautiful.
And I mean, people really enjoy it, and I'm very grateful. And so, I love that I get to, as a great lover of people and civilization, I love that I get to travel and shake hands with people all over the world. And usually if they show up, especially to book events, it's people that are, that want to think the same way. We shake hands and take each other's measure and say, all right, let's agree at least this far to, stop putting a bottle of Fiji water on our stool on stage.
Well, that fits right in your book. You're talking so much about good work. That's what the importance of good work and how you just want to do good work, and you want to help people and you want to make people's lives better through everything you're doing. And that's kind of what even the tax preparer could want that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's just so noble. And when I think about my own professional journey, when I finally quit focusing on myself, I mean, I got responsibilities. I got 2 kids, wife, the whole deal, but tried to make what I was doing a little bit bigger than just lining my bank account.
Yeah.
That's when things started working. It was the strangest thing.
It's really what it's all about. I have been lucky enough to play at a lot of colleges. And I mean, colleges, when I learned that, the student body has a entertainment committee or something, and they get together and they have a budget, and once a semester they get to pick somebody, and sometimes they pick me. And I mean, how can you not?
How cool is that?
Just be incredibly grateful and want to bust your ass, and instead of show up and be cynical and roll your eyes at these kids. Young people have chosen me to entertain them, and maybe they understand that I sneak a little broccoli into the pizza. And so with that in mind, I mean, I say to them, listen, the best advice I can give you is whatever you're here at school doing, just try and figure out what you love to do with your time, and then try and figure out some way to get paid to do that. Whatever it is. I mean, if you love birds, maybe you go to work for Audubon, but maybe you work for a publishing company that does nature books, or the possibilities are limitless, but that's what the hell is the point of living? If you're going to end up, in a cubicle or at a desk that you don't want to be at, then you're trapped. And so I'm very grateful. I mean, when I graduated from my high school and got into a great theater program at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, that was the first time in college that I said, holy cow, I want to stay up all night and ace these classes. I want to be the top of my class. I found it. I found the thing that I want to be a master of and just do the best I can. And many of us, when we find that, even then, we might not get to end up getting cool parts in plays in Chicago. Maybe I'll end up running a scenery shop, which I almost did. Or maybe I'll end up running the box office of a theater. But whatever it is, you're not there to like crank out the most cash, soaking people for theater tickets. You're there in the service of putting people in front of great storytelling, which is medicine.
Yes.
And so for what it's worth, all the things that I am involved with, and I think that's the epiphany that hit me. It's at the root of what we're talking about. When I read those Wendell Berry stories, what the universe said to me was, here is the medicine that you can spend the rest of your life engaging in. You know, in this book, I mean, I'm about to go back and visit my cows. I met an English shepherd on Twitter and went to visit his family on their farm in remote northwest England in the Lake District. Just immediately said, "I am now in your family. Welcome to." And we all agreed, like, you're now in our family. I can show up there anytime. I sleep. They have a nice, comfy little apartment off their sheep barn, and whatever the time of year, they know I just want to get up and farm with them.
Just go.
And for some reason, he's an incredible writer. He has 2 great books, The Shepherd's Life and Pastoral Song. And his wife, Helen, she has an incredible new book that just came out called The Farmer's Wife that will not – you should get her on your podcast. Yeah. And I'll be happy to introduce you.
I'd love it.
This book and all of the stuff we love – I'm about to start crying thinking about how it made me feel.
You told me that. That's what started this, I think, is you reached out to tell me about that book.
That's right.
And I really, I'll take your recommendations all day.
And so, I mean, impossibly, I'm a kid from Illinois. Now I live in California, and suddenly I own a dozen belted Galloway cows in Northwest England because I share their obsession for grass-fed beef and rotational grazing and understanding, like reworking the soil health and the incredible benefits of the carbon sink, things that are happening like with white oak pastures in Georgia or Joel Salatin or all of these great stories of like, look, we're going to just try doing what Aldo Leopold is talking about, what Wendell Berry is talking about. It's nowhere near a repeatable paradigm. Like, we can't just suddenly shift everybody, but this is the way forward. It's clearly the way forward. Like, we've destroyed so much of our topsoil in this country, and here are these incredible experimenters just going backwards, just saying, well, I think people used to get along with Mother Nature. In fact, they sort of made that one of their mission statements was like, well, our tribe wants to live here, hopefully forever. So how can we get our clothing and food in a way that our generations to come can, and let's call that sustainability. Mm-hmm. And so I get to like go see this wonderful family. I get to travel with Megan, my wife, to parks, and to the Berry farm. And they have a Wendell Berry farming program. Yep. They also have they have their own beef program called Our Home Place Beef, which wherever you are, you can order it. You can get it shipped in. Which is great, but eventually, let's get everybody doing this locally so we don't. I don't ever want to get a steak through the mail again. I mean, I love it. I love supporting these programs, but everyone should have this down the road. Like, if you can't get amazing eggs, then become your local purveyor of eggs. It's not that tough,
I just really admire that you're so passionate about, because, it's just built into your DNA. But really, at this point, you could be the guy sitting in the pool and listening to Neil Young, and you choose to devote your energy. And we were talking about schedules before we started recording, and I mean, you got a lot going on. And so the fact that you write these books, talk about these issues, engage with people on the ground doing the work, participate in it. I mean, it's so inspiring. And I think anybody, and I used to be this guy, I'm too busy. You're never too busy. You can figure out times to, I mean, when you're assuming your needs are met and that you can pay the bills and that kind of thing, like you're at a certain level of privilege, there's time to be made.
There is. And I now here's where I'll stop our earlier agreement that we're both terrific, because I come from a family of just of the right kind of Christians. My mom and dad are probably parishioners 1 and 2 in our Catholic church. And me and my siblings left the church and are all, I think I can safely say we're all atheist, but we're all very spiritual, like our, what you could describe as actual Christian values, which you don't see in a lot of modern Christianity, brand name Christianity, are incredibly important to us. I mean, we lean on ourselves and what we learned from our mom and dad to lead lives of service or to treat everyone decently as best we can. And so I'll always be very aware of the incredible life of luxury that I live. And I'll never live up to my mom and dad's example of living lives of service. But getting to engage in this medicine delivery system helps a lot, instead of, collecting cars or, like just doing something that's just material. And I don't know, it's a great blessing when you understand. And again, from my family, taking like really frugal Minnesota fishing cabin vacations and learning at those what a good time and how much love and affection you can share for no money. If you got a deck of cards and a case of beer and a grill and a boat, you're set. Like you will be as happy as any king, or probably happier.
Happier, yeah, you're right.
And so I'm so grateful for that knowledge, because that means that I don't make decisions based on like hoarding wealth or ambitions of like trophies or, life goals. When people ask me, is there a role, you'd love to play or I never think about, and I say, no, I don't. Because here's the thing, the things that have been the best for me, I never could have thought of.
Yeah.
If I was like, well, sure, I'd love to play old Superman. I mean, only if some great writer, some great artist knows what to do with me as old Superman, because I don't. Like, I never could have come up with the things that have served me the best as an actor. I never could have thought those up. So that frees me.
Sure. That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
And so I can go to my wood shop, or I can write a book, or I can go on tour with my dumb songs, waiting in the hopes that some great artists will want me to come do their version of old Superman.
I told some people this the other day when it was like 20 years ago, but there was a guy that I worked with when I was in a cubicle at Merrill Lynch. I said, I won't say his name. I said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? He said, I'm going to the movies. I said, well, what movie are you going to see? And he said, Spider-Man. Have you ever heard anybody say that?
I've never
it's like
heard
Batman,
that.
Superman,
no.
Iron Man.
All things exist in this universe. And now I've heard Spider-Man. Like Bellman.
Isn't that funny?
It's funny because Megan always, I have a weird thing because I come from a cultural vacuum, and I don't mean that as an insult. Growing up in a tiny Illinois farm town in the 70s and 80s, we just didn't have we had like the 3 primetime channels and top 40 radio. And so I gleaned a lot of the world through reading.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people can relate to this even now. Well, maybe not because of the movies, but like Lord of the Rings, for example, I lived on and the Chronicles of Narnia and other sci-fi and fantasy. And then eventually when people began to make movies, or it became, part of the zeitgeist, and they would pronounce Legolas wrong. Whereas because you have to decide these things when you read them as a kid. And so that has bled into my life where I don't always know how to pronounce things because, like, for example, when Megan and I graduated into this much fancier life where suddenly we're in 5-star hotels in New York and Paris. And I'll say, like, do you want me to call the bellman? And she'll say, honey, it's Bellman, or things like that, or where I'm like, to this day, the disparity in her sophistication and my lack is, it keeps things interesting. Where I'm like, honey, thank you. I'll probably say bellman again next time, but please.
I'm the same way, but then I have this Southern accent on top of it all.
Yeah.
How do you say the CHEETOS, the food?
Cheetos.
I say Cheetos.
Cheetos.
I get people laugh at me for that.
I mean, I would shame those people.
Okay, all right. I'm going to keep that I'm going to keep that audio clip on my phone.
We're all just doing our best. There is a wonderful writer and performer that I really love and admire named John Hodgman. Really funny guy. He I don't know if he still does it. He used to write an occasional piece in the New York Times, like a manners piece.
Okay, nice.
And he has a great podcast called Judge John Hodgman.
Oh, cool.
And he dispenses, his listeners call in with feuds, and maybe it's between a couple siblings. It's like domestic things. Uh-huh. And he weighs them out and dispenses literal justice with a sense of humor. And he's so smart and funny. And and he's a friend and colleague. But I'm such a fan of his. And one of the things that I've stolen from him is that we all so maybe it's two siblings and the brother wants to watch something stupid on TV and then she wants to watch The Bachelor or whatever. And it's just it's oil and water and they fight, or it's playing music or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the answer is, well, you both get to have an equal turn is the answer. Even if he's listening to like grunge, like screamo metal or something. And he says, listen, we can't shame others for liking what they like. We have to be allowed to like what we like. Maybe it's terrible. Mm-hmm. Maybe it really is terrible. Like you have to have the worst taste to like it, but it's your prerogative. And if it's your brother and if it's a channel, then he has to get an equal turn. And if you can't stand it, then you may leave the room or you may put on headphones. Mm-hmm. But if you want him to respect your thing, and it's funny. It's a comedy. It's an erudite comedy show. It's on the Maximum Fun podcast channel.
Okay, I'll check it out. We'll link to it.
And it's really fun and funny, but it also makes me cry sometimes.
That's really?
Because it's really he's really loving and he's really full of empathy. I mean, he's a really smart, erudite guy who happens to be hilarious. And so it's those examples, or in this book, my two heroes that became my dear friends, Jeff Tweedy and George Saunders. These are poets and troubadours of empathy. I am so moved by their work that is also funny and like rousing, but they are these incredibly wise top talents who are trying to use their powers for good, and with whatever I have in the toolbox from Mother Nature, I take inspiration from people like this and say, okay, let me mix your ingredients into my goulash that I'm then going to try and serve to my audience.
I love it. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to take all these lessons from people like you, ranchers, conservationists, historians, and then somehow, at the end of the day, it's kind of a selfish project because I'm trying to figure it out.
It is, but we've come back around to answer your last question, which was about good work. And that's something I completely steal from Wendell Berry or have learned as a student of Wendell Berry, is that it's having the wherewithal to do what you've described and what I've described, and that is look for good work that can be done. It's going to be so much more satisfying. You got to find a balance.
Sure.
We have to be able to afford that grass-fed beef, but at the same time, we don't have to be able to eat it with diamond forks.
All right. I've taken way too much of your time here, and I could keep doing this, but I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and inviting me over. And
let's be aspirational, because I choose my projects by gut. I don't seek anything out. I don't say, okay, next year I want to do 2 movies and a book. Just like Siddhartha, I see what's coming down the river, and I'm like, oh, a sci-fi series. Okay. Love it. And so, but let's be aspirational. And in the list of possibilities now is coming to do some hiking with you. And let's knock some of that out. And then, like every couple of years, maybe we can do this again.
I would love it. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep reading your stuff, watching your stuff, admiring your woodwork, and good luck with your upcoming travel. I mean, I know it's nothing new, having a packed schedule, but not that you need my approval or anything, but the world is a better place because of what you're doing. And, what you're doing is very important, but how you do it, I think, is the real important thing. And I'll never be an actor. Maybe someday I'll be kind of a half-assed woodworker, but I can apply these lessons that I've learned from you, both through conversation and through these books, to my life. And so thank you. Seriously, I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm a big fan of what you do. And something I'd like to point out when people come check out offermanwoodshop.com, I haven't made $1 off of this company really ever, but I mean, I used to be solo. And so like I had the illusion of I would get the profit of each table. And it was before I began to keep a ledger of overhead and things like rent and insurance. So I was like, great, I just made $5,000. But since I've started having employees, we flirt with breaking even most of the time. But if you come to offermanwoodshop.com, it's pretty great. There's lots of really fun stuff. Some of it's very expensive. Some of it's affordable. But right now at the moment, I have 4 woodworkers, and what you're supporting is them 100%. I usually go a little bit in the red every year that I happily do, because what we're all together trying to do is provide 4 people with a healthy living. Honest to God Americans making actual handcrafted wooden items. And so I like to point that out to people, because people have this weird thing where they're like, I want my thing made by the guy from TV. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my woodworkers are way better than me. First of all, because they're full-time woodworkers and I'm a dancing mountebank. Like, I'm on your stage in your town. So they're actually there right now making the amazing stuff. So I thank everybody for their support. And I just always like to, it's so funny. I tell our clients, you get a little card that says, thank you for supporting these honest to God Americans. And I try to convince people that the person whose name they don't know, who actually made their 3-legged stool, is way more charismatic than the dipshit from TV. So let's all just remember that and keep that in our special place.
Well, I'll have links to everything we discussed here and all the books we discussed. Plenty more to talk about. And if you're not going to call security on me, I will take you up on the offer to do some more stuff in the future. But really, man, thank you. This is great. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number 1, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word of mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number 2, you can go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number 3, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon, and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number 4, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. 1 email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way. So head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.